following a VPD chart. If you
Didn't you
preference that, no. As a running joke is Mr. Grote invented VPD. That's a joke.
For a joke,
some people take it seriously.
You need to have Mr. Grote's VPD chart just to do it, put your logo on it.
I don't want to be the one to break this to everyone, but if you actually lay down in Mr. Grote's bed and look up, the VPD chart is
right there. It's crazy. That's just to start his day.
VPD for seedlings. I like to use the Pulse VPD monitors. So if you Google Pulse VPD, seems to be the go-to. They have 3 different charts: one for seedling and clones, one for veg, one for flowering. If you reference that, you'll see. Just look what temperature you're running. Scroll over. There's a dark green range, a light green range, and then a yellow range. Within the dark green range, usually you'll see that that's the ideal range to be in. You'll want to. It usually calls for a higher humidity in the seedling stage. So I'm usually running 70+% RH.
Tropical conditions.
And then as far as temperature, I'm usually running anywhere between 75 and 82 degrees Fahrenheit. Not sure what that is on Celsius. Sorry, I can't translate that right now, but
like 22 to 27.
Well, and then
there we go.
We are in a tropical climate here in Canada, so dealing with it often. Do you deal with? And I see looking over there the old AC Infinity humidifier. Do you deal with too much humidity ever when you're in that seedling stage?
No. It
is oddly humid lately as we've been here.
It has been. It is very, very humid. The thing is, though, is like in this area, it's almost the only reason that it's not a prime area to grow this plant is the early fall. Snow hits in October almost every year. By late October, we have snow, and it's already cold before that. So we unfortunately have we have optimal growing conditions here. We've got a sun that just beats down at a nice 85 at most, and 80. You might hit 90s every now and again, but it's very seldom. Not seldom. Well, it's not the common. You guys were here at 110.
But if you look everywhere, it's an agricultural province.
You're right. I'm in the center. I'm in the wheat belt. This is the agriculture county, if you will. So you're right. There's the reason things grow here. It is the wheat belt. Yep. And so you could get away with it. I don't have those kind of problems. I don't have dry, humid spots, and the abundance of humidity from outdoors simply just doesn't make it indoors. I just don't have that problem. Now I also have central air and all these things that's moving the air in my house. At most, I sit about 35. In the tent, 61, but that's because we've got it open. But I'm assuming it's probably about 35, 40 here. So I'm still adding humidity, even though it's 94%.
And still able to just leave butt on the table. Blows my mind.
There is no butt on the table. YouTube, leave me alone.
YouTube? I said butt on the table. He leaves his butt right on the table.
Sorry, the humidity.
Humidity and temperature. So
I think that.
Well, do you run into situations where you're getting too much dry out in your media in between these waterings? Because a lot of people that I know personally will go thank you. You literally taking it. We'll go instead of the solo cup because, and this is where my plants are going to be dead when I get home. If I would have had them in a larger container, I wouldn't have to trust to have somebody water them. But I know no one's watering. I hope Mom, please show up. Didn't tell me she's gonna. Didn't say she was or wasn't. That's the thing, though. But in your case, looking at these plants, you started these in what are those 1 gallons?
I started them in solo cups.
So we're looking over at plants.
And these are 1 gallon pots for those
solo cups into the one. So now that the size that these are, they're going to be wanting water damn near like the solo cups did. So you transition the same amount. But if you start a seedling in a small container, well, it may take longer to develop thicker, hardier roots. You won't have to water as frequently. And you can get away with the temperature or the humidity swing just a little bit as long as your media is moist enough.
I like to start in 1 gallon containers.
I often do too. I just didn't have any.
I really like to start in 1 gallon containers versus a solo cup. I prefer it. I like to for a couple different reasons. One, holding on to the moisture a little bit more because the rootstone isn't as established just yet, right? It takes longer. It can be in that container longer before I have to transplant. Those are really the 2 main reasons why eventually I am going to have to transplant. But being in a 1 gal, I could be in a 1 gal for roughly 20 days, around 20 days. Then I'm looking to transplant. When I'm in a solo cup, I'm looking to transplant between days 10 and 14, roughly, assuming growth is good,
Yep. competition made me do this.
Yeah, there was that. There was that, but then also
But no, I would do the same process either way. I always start in solo cups. I always start in solo cups, and then it just makes it easier to plant 15 genetics, have them in solos. Some pop, some don't, and then they typically go to either 1 or 3 gallons. I do upsize a lot because I try to maximize the space in my garden. So smaller the pot, I can maximize the size of the canopy, move it up. I kind of live by the adage that I'm not just training the plant and training the roots as well. So a little abuse down under doesn't always hurt.
More from abuse down under.
And there's nothing wrong with starting in a large container, right? So it's like some people opt to start a bid or start a 10 gallon, 15 gallon, right? Whatever floats your boat. There's pros and cons to starting in a small container versus a large container. Some I can think of off the top of my head, right? If you're starting in small containers, well, you can fit more plants in that grow space. Starting in larger containers, let's say a 4 foot by 4 foot grow tent, for example, right? Start with a bunch of solo cups in there. If you're in 20 gallon grow pots, well, you're kind of limited to 4 at that point, right? You can only plant 4.
I didn't even think about that.
But if you start in a large container, well, you're not going to have to water as frequently to begin. It goes back to the root zones not being established as much. You're not going to need to transplant it all if you put it in your final container throughout the entire time. So there are pros and cons to both ways to go about it. You can have success either way, starting in a large container or a small container.
Well, and I think also if you're going organic, oftentimes the rule of thumb that I've learned is like a larger container is what you're going to want to grow with. So if your food is in a small little container, just expect to be transplanting the same as somebody who's not using organic soil, because your plant's going to be eating everything that's available in there pretty quickly if it's a small solo cup.
Yeah, I think it's just important if you're going to be going into a larger pot with a smaller plant, just to optimize your watering.
Yeah, that's big. That's big. Yeah. You can overwater so easily in a large.
So easy, and that water's not going anywhere. There's no roots, and then I would assume that your air is not just a tornado in there that's taking away all the moisture. So I would just optimize watering. If you've got a beanling in there, then I would just water within maybe a 6-inch circle. That might even be a little bit too much for a beanling. Maybe a 4.5-inch circle around it, and you let it go. Old timers used to tell us, you don't water the plant, you water the root ball, and you want to water around it so that the roots kind of like reach for the moisture. If you keep the water up close to the plant, then the roots don't get to exercise. They just stay back because there's just always water right here. So just maximize watering based on the size of the plant.
That's probably the biggest mistake, I think, is overwatering. Biggest mistake that causes stunted growth for sure. Like,
kill your roots.
Because once you've overwatered, it's a lack of oxygen in the root zone. And that's really what's stunting the plant. And I think that's the biggest mistake that beginners make, both in smaller containers and larger containers, because you could totally overwater a solo cup too and cause stunted growth. And transitioning over to, if you do stunt that growth in the seedling stage the first 7 days or so, man, oftentimes, to be honest with you, I don't know about you guys, but I'm starting over sometimes. I have stunted seedlings over, and you can clearly see that day 7, stunted seedlings, even some yellowing, some like rusting happening to those leaves. If I plant another fresh seed in a new container right next to it, that will outgrow the stunted seedling. Versus the time it takes for that stunted seedling to recover. Like, it can recover, sure, certainly.
A lot of work.
But if you're on a time crunch, right, if you're trying to save time here and you have the seeds, plant new ones, that could definitely outgrow a stunted seedling.
This FTS clip was brought to you by AC Infinity, leaders in garden innovation. Use discount code TheStash15 at checkout to save some money on your order.
From the Stash Podcast.